Now, King Charles, I still can't get used to that King Charles thing, has reportedly decided against a low-budget coronation next year, despite concerns over the optics in the midst of a cost-of-living crisis. Despite claims of the sovereign's initial reservations, the palace and government have reportedly agreed to embrace full-blown pomp and pageantry on May the 6th in a bid to showcase Britain, having taken note of the huge international interest in the commemorations for Queen Elizabeth II after her death in September. While the King's coronation is expected to be shorter and have fewer attendees than his mother's almost 70 years ago, the only elements expected to be axed are those deemed to be outdated and cumbersome, meaning we will have a celebration fit for Britain. But is this the most sensible move politically for the royal family? Already in a bit of a mess, aren't they? When regular Brits are having to tighten their belts. I want to hear if you think King Charles is right to have a cut price, pound shop coronation during a cost of living crisis. Send me your thoughts on dan@gbnews.uk or tweet them to me at gbnews. And while you're there, go vote in our Twitter poll. I'll bring you those results very shortly, by the way. But first, to help you make up your mind, let me bring in historian David Starkey and Graham Smith, Chief Executive of Anti-Monarchy Group Republic. Right, good evening, gentlemen. Thank you so much for joining me. OK, so the coronation, initially it was going to be a cut price job and we were all going to be fine. That's a good thing. And now it's going to be all the pomp and ceremony. So, David Starkey, this is surely going to be good for the country, isn't it? The reason evidently is we're promoting GB. It's a marvellous country. Come and visit us. A good idea.
Yes, full stop. And also, come on, Dawn, a cut price coronation. Do you know what a New York barista calls a decaf espresso? He calls it a why bother? Why bother with a cut price coronation? The problem is, and I'm very fond of Graham, he's a sweet, nice man, but of course he doesn't understand Britain, and Republicans don't. The fundamental thing is we need ceremony. As somebody whose great festival we're about to celebrate, Jesus said, man does not live by bread alone. You want things that bring you together collectively. It's all well and good to talk about what it will do for Britain abroad. Dawn, I'm much more concerned about what it will do for Britain at home. What the Queen's death, what that extraordinary procession, that progress through the country of King Charles did. We desperately need bringing together. We need bringing together. We need bringing out of the dumps in exactly the same way that we did back in 1953. I was a boy then. I saw the coronation the first time I'd seen television. We were emerging from the dark gloom of a Labour government that had inflicted rationing 6 years beyond the war. We wanted something different. We wanted to be together. We wanted to celebrate. We wanted to belong. That is what it will do.
Graham, surely David's got a point. I mean, it's tough at the moment. Yes, it's tough financially, but, it would cheer us up. It's a bit of colour. It's a bit of light relief and amongst all the doom and gloom. Surely we can allow ourselves one day of celebrating.
Well, no, I think that the problem with staunch royalists like David is that they don't understand Britain, and they think and they patronise Britain by suggesting that we need to bend the knee to this one very ordinary family. I mean, let's put a few things into context. Firstly, Charles is already king. He doesn't need a coronation at all. So I would agree with the comment, why bother? Why bother? We don't need it at all. He's already king. It makes no constitutional or political difference. And what it will do is, I think, backfire. I think that it will certainly be a focal point for Republican protests, and we'll be protesting down there on the day and in the lead up to it. It will be a slap in the face to millions of people in this country who are struggling to put food on the table, who are struggling to pay their rent, who are struggling to cope with mortgages where the interest rates are going up. And King Charles, I'm also getting used to that. King Charles is constantly putting his hands deeper into the taxpayer's pocket, and it has to stop. And there's absolutely no reason for us to be throwing tens of millions of pounds on a big look at me tour for Charles when he is already king. We need to actually start challenging the world on secrecy, on abuse of public money, on
when an American president is elected, he is elected, there is still an inauguration ceremony. There is such exactly for President Macron. President Macron in France is now actually being accused of imitating the kings of England and France because he's going out, putting his arm around failed footballers who've lost the World Cup. And we've just got to stop imagining that life is simply reasonable. Paul Graham imagines that life is just about reason, that it's boring, that it's dull. He is a typical Puritan.
David,
the last time we had a republic, they abolished Christmas. They simply they hate pleasure, they hate fun, they hate colour, they hate
the royals do not provide it.
Sorry, Graham, you just sort of implied that if we did go ahead with the coronation, that was a bit sort of like pomp and ceremony, that people would be so unhappy they'd be rioting on the streets and people would be campaigning along the route to, I don't know, off with their heads, that type of thing?
No, I said that there'll be protests, and there will be protests because I'm organising them, and there will be plenty of other people organising protests.
Be as negligible as they usually are.
If you look at the other big events, I mean, the way they're portrayed in the media, you would think the whole country is interested. They're not. At the Jubilee, 14% said that they were definitely going to be taking an interest. Most people were not interested. Same was true 10 years ago with the Jubilee. Same was true with the 2011 wedding. Same was true with the 2018 wedding. No, most people are not that bothered by the royal family and their big set-piece events.
Come on. When we lost the Queen, I think the whole family felt that. Surely we were all interested. We did care. How can you say we weren't interested?
Within days, people were starting to complain about the saturation coverage. It was excessive. It was also disgraceful in terms of broadcasters who didn't take one moment to reflect the very odd situation that this man, very ordinary, prickly, difficult individual, just walks into the job of head of state in a modern democracy. No sort of discussion about whether or not he's qualified, no discussion about whether or not he has any legitimate right to that job. His mum had it, therefore he walks into it. And there was there's something like 27% in a poll back in the beginning of the year. It's consistently now about a quarter of the population want the monarchy abolished. 15% on top of that are in the don't know camp, which is an increase in that. Support for the monarchy has dropped from 75 to 60%. And none of that is reflected in the way these things are covered. I mean, at the moment, Republicans are outpolling every political party in the country, save for Labour. And yet none of that discussion gets included in this kind of coverage. And so people are left with the impression that the country is celebrating these big events. They are not.
It's a good thing you're on GBNews because we give everyone the opportunity to have an opinion. David, coming back to you, I mean, surely this will, I agree with you to a certain extent, but surely it will raise more questions about the trouble with Andrew and Harry. Do we want really to open all those again, those wounds?
I don't think it will. I think that, again, we've had Graham lecturing us on opinion polls. Andrew and Meghan and Harry are the absolute margins now of public consciousness. People simply don't care. I think people do care about the king. They care about the monarchy. And what, of course, Graham, who is actually profoundly ignorant about our history as well as the state of public opinion, we are a republic. But we're a crowned republic. And if you actually
David,
look
that is profound ignorance about our Constitution.
We'd had to respect, as our head of state, Liz Truss and Boris Johnson and those before them.
This is
all the serious countries in Europe.
This is a profoundly ignorant statement.
That are the most please just let me finish. Are the most democratic, are constitutional monarchies. It works. We haven't produced a Biden. We haven't produced what was even worse, the Orange Man before it. And if we had, as we showed with Truss, as we showed with Boris, we get rid of them quickly. But the central figure of our nation, the thing, by the way, which is why the army is
illiteracy, David.
The army that swears allegiance to the crown, that swears allegiance to something above and beyond politics, above and beyond the mere ebb and flow of opinion polls. The thing that touches us, touches our history, that matters, and leaves little epiphenomena
other
like
countries do
Republic
this.
and like Graham.
Ireland has
Just
a history.
watch
Iceland
like
has a
little
history.
dots in the water.
I'm sorry, you go on. You really do go on. Iceland has a history. Ireland has a history. Finland has a history. Republics have histories. America has a history. France has a history. They don't forget about these things because they have given up the idea of looking up to some really tedious, dull, uninspiring people.
America has a ruling class. The Kennedys exercise much more influence badly, actually, in the House of Windsor.
Charles is completely uninspiring, dull. He's got no qualification for the job. No one has voted for him. And if there was a free and fair election in which he was a candidate, he wouldn't dare stand it. If he did, he would lose and lose badly. And the fact that he is therefore our king, despite the fact that he would lose and lose badly, should be the reason why we get rid of the monarchy. But there's a whole load of other reasons, like the abuse of public money, like the secrecy, like the interfering in politics behind closed doors. This is a rotten institution that does not deserve to exist. And we should not.
Unlike the beauties of the House of Commons, the House of Lords, the glory of a House of Lords that appoints Tom Watson with the Labour Party, which I'm sure you propose.
The House of Lords should go too. The House of Lords is rotten.
Come on, be sensible, be reasonable. I know it's difficult.
Boys, shush. Thank you so much. Okay, well, that is called The Clash because it's a clash. That was historian David Starkey and Graham Smith, the chief executive of Anti-Monarchy Group. You might have spotted that bit. Thank you both so much for joining me tonight. Great fun to listen to both of you and very fiery, a great clash.